Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Every child knew about the Skyripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? This Emperor, Isengrim III, had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lupino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renato felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Skyripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Skyripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? This is why heroes are called dashing, Renato thought. See? Dashing? Get it? What were these poles, exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods? The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Skyripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the lost gods, thousands of thousands had died. But Renato had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one. That could come in handy in a pinch. he needed some way to break the ice with this wall, so to speak.
Can I borrow that?
Didn't your mother tell you it's rude to stare? Snapped Renato, a little smug.
Puzzle. Renato loved puzzles. Except when he couldn't figure them out. On the other hand, if there was a puzzle, it was probably meant to keep people away from something good.
See? That wasn't so hard. There it was. Skyripper's Armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate.
No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end. He would have to choose the greatest good no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core.
Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the Farfarer. Why had he chosen the Skyripper? It was the sort of path he'd always avoided. The path of responsibility, of seriousness. Had he grown up? He didn't feel grown up. He'd made this decision from his gut, like he always did. Somehow, he'd impulsively decided to stop being impulsive. Did that make any sense?
Hoped his hook didn't break. These were really nice chests.
He should take one home, he thought.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
Interrupted story time. Caught the lead raven. I will never find out how it ended.
Renato checked to make sure his sword was still working. Yep.
There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest, the mice and rabbits. Where had they gone? And he was getting hungry too. This was an unhealthy place to be. Coming back to him. He wondered what he'd remember next. The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark arts, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin, then glow. The sick feeling quickly spun away. Now he only felt sad. He had lost good friends for this war apparatus. Maybe Lupino wasn't such a good friend. Yeah, that made him feel better. He carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now he had to make his next move. There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of super weapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it. Renato had never been much of a student. At Swordfu School, he'd never read the books, just looked at the pictures. I'm Zenobia. But weapons, he understood. His gut told him that the Skyripper would work great. He would use it to take out the Imperial outpost. And what's the worst that could happen? The thing wouldn't work, and then he'd take it to the scientists. Right? Exactly.
As he set out down the path, Renato wondered why the parts of the Skyripper had only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had discarded it. This Emperor, Isengrim III, had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Perhaps that was bringing up lost artifacts. How perfect, then, that the Skyripper would reappear to be his destruction.
This was way better than being able to shrink down to the size of an ant. What was that all about, anyway? Practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things. You know, ore is pretty heavy to carry. You know what's not? A new sword. What was really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship. He was tired of slaughtering ravens. Maybe it was time to test out the new weapon. He turned a knob on the Skyripper. It made strange, mechanical noises. The wheels spun faster. It began to hum. The Skyripper was following his every step. At least it acknowledged him as the master. But there was no trigger. How was he supposed to fire it? Fire, he said. Nothing happened. Well, maybe it just needed to warm up. After all, it hadn't been fired in thousands of years. The Skyripper had been built by the Transcendent Emperor. To figure it out, he just had to think like a legendary demigod. That actually wasn't as helpful as it sounded.
A crafting bench. Renato wondered what he could make with it. The Skyripper was making a whining noise now, and its wheels were spinning so fast he could no longer see them.
Renato had a thought. "Please?" he asked. The Skyripper began to glow. Boom! The outpost burst into flame.
Ravens flapped out screaming, wings on fire. The base was his. The far-speaker toad came hopping out.
Renato!
It croaked, sounding like a toad version of Zenobia.
Don't use the Skyripper! It will destroy the world!
Yeah, sure it will, cracked Renato. Pull the other one.
If you don't trust me, go see Calaveras. He'll tell you the same thing.
Oh, she would say that. That sounded sensible. Why did she always have to sound sensible all the time? Oh, it was infuriating.
Of course she would say that. He was supposed to hurry and bring the Skyripper to the council so the rebels could actually win the war. But what if she was right? Damn it.
Zenobia was so frustrating. If she couldn't get you with magic, she'd get you with reason and caution and sensible arguments. Of course, Calaveras, he might not know the latest scientific theories with evidence and all, but Renato preferred the knowledge in the old books anyway. What they said felt true, and that's what's important. You should be careful, though. She'd probably guess he'd come here. That meant she'd probably set an ambush for him.
Renato landed on the island, expecting Zenobia's ambush at any moment.
God, after all these years, she still drove him crazy. Or, unless they were part of the ambush, the obvious reasons he was meant to see to take his mind off the ones he wouldn't see. There did seem to be a lot of ravens around here.
That was awesome!
No skateboarding, the sign said.
Zenobia's ambush never materialized. Could she be sincere? Calaveras was a great scholar. Renato doubted even Zenobia could convince him to say something he didn't believe. And if he was working for the Empire, he'd never have told Renato about the Skyripper in the first place. Well, he would listen to the wise old toad. But that didn't mean he had to agree.
Renato's paws were getting numb. Calaveras really didn't want company, did he? To his alarm, Renato realized that the rebels had no way of knowing he had a powerful new weapon. They might set off on their attack of the fleet before he could bring the Skyripper to the fight. He had to hurry, while there were still rebels to save. Once you try it, you're hooked.
Calaveras examined the Skyripper eagerly.
What? How often does a new relic surface?
He brushed off Zenobia's warning.
Oh, what a sorceress know about physics.
However, he did know a few ways to make the weapon even more precise and more powerful, and quickly went off to tinker. Soon the Skyripper no longer whined, but thrummed like a hummingbird taking off. It was ready for war.
And so, Renato thanked Calaveras and took the legendary weapon to the final battle. But where were the other rebel ships? Had something happened?
He could defeat the Imperial fleet with a Skyripper, but he couldn't govern. He was not cut out to be Emperor, and he'd no desire to be one. There were a few rebel ships here and there, but there was no organization to the battle. Where was the Council flagship? Something had gone terribly wrong.
But he had the Skyripper, and the Ravens had nowhere they could hide. He felt like Tarzan.
Boom! Once, Renato had been to a dungeon where all the chests were locked. It was awful. It's not personal, but your mother wears army boots. On her ears.
Take a leap of faith, said the inscription.
Council speaker was on the deck, bleeding. Why was she even here? They found our base, she croaked. The council, all dead. We must surrender. No, we could still win this, said Renato. I have the Skyripper. He would be a real hero and save the day, even when all appeared to be lost. You're a good boy, said the speaker, and then she died.
Aim it.
So much about... Ooh, what was it again? fired at the Skyripper. With a tremendous whoosh, the Emperor's flagship went up in flames. And for good measure, he played the beam around it, setting all the other nearby Imperial ships on fire too. And he watched them burn. The few remaining rebels gave a cheer. And then they stopped cheering. There was a hole in the air. A blackness, like a tear in a parchment. Wind was blowing into it, widening it. It grew larger. Crates were falling off ship decks, upwards into the hole. And the world itself seemed bent, like the reflection on a curved mirror as it poured into the ravenous hole. He guessed that somewhere behind that ever-widening hole were gods that had long been exiled. But it didn't really matter. Time was done for here, and soon it was.
Renato stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. But he'd learned another true thing. The core was powerful, but dangerous if used improperly.